Hi, good night, everyone. This is U.S. Immigration Attorney Sharifa Tharpe. I am live to take your U.S. immigration related questions. So go ahead and put your questions in the comments because I'm here to answer your immigration related questions. So let me formally introduce myself. I'm U.S. Immigration Attorney. I help clients to get their green cards and status in the United States. I'm also here live every night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time to take your questions. I also come with topics that I think are important to talk about. And so tonight I am going to be talking about the scenario. What if you're here without your documents, your papers? How can you go on to fix your status? Now, this is an extremely broad question, but this is a question that I get often, and I'm going to talk about some of those solutions tonight. So, Babe 1900, always nice to see you here. Do the CO ask back questions when you go in back to submit proof of the relationship? So it depends. If they have scheduled another interview, then that is, if it's an interview notice that you received, where you're going to have to go back and sit down with the officer, then at that point you should definitely expect more questions, and you and your spouse should definitely be prepared to answer those questions correctly and consistently, because that's going to be the key there. And if it's a second interview, usually that's what they're looking for. They're looking for to see if you can continue to prove a bona fide marriage, or if you're going to show or confirm for them once and for all their suspicions that your marriage is not bona fide. However, sometimes they do just instruct you to drop off the paperwork, and they'll give you specific instructions based on the service center. If it's something like that, it may not be an interview. It may just be to drop documents off. But Babe 1900, keep in mind that I'm not your attorney and I'm not giving you personal legal advice. Remember, this is general information. It's basically a general information based on very limited facts. And so if you want personal legal advice, especially if you are being called in for a second interview, it's usually called the Stokes interview. You want to make sure you're protected, get legal advice. You can always call, schedule a consultation, and talk more about your particular circumstances and what's going on in your case. So if you marry for 10, can I still proceed with the paper? So I'm not sure at Tanya Cummins, if you're married for 10, I think you mean for 10 years, can I still proceed with the paper? I'm not sure what that means. Can you clarify before I answer the question? Because I may answer it incorrectly and I don't want to do that. So Brian Sanchez, if you have a private question, that's where the personal consultation is going to come in. You will have to schedule a consultation by calling 561-405-4889. When you call that number, you're going to get a scheduling coordinator, and that scheduling coordinator is going to be available up until 11 p.m. tonight. And then tomorrow from noon to 5 p.m. and Sunday noon to 5 p.m. So you can go ahead and call right now if you have, and schedule the appointment to get your legal advice. 5 of us went in for the interview, but the CO gives us 221G to submit proof of relationship. Okay, so you're F4. So Babe 1900, I'm not sure. So this is not, in this case, it's at the embassy and it's consular processing. So in this case, it's really going to be dependent on your facts, what's going on. And so that's where you have to schedule a consultation. Can you answer your opening question? So Glory, Dania, thanks for bringing me back to my topic. However, I am going to prioritize people's questions. So I'll definitely get to that opening topic very shortly. I just see an additional question. They were on off for 10 years. He was acting up, so decided to go ahead with the paper. So Tanya Cummins, call, schedule a consultation, because I want to hear more about your circumstances. it seems like there were some problems in the marriage. And if you had severe issues that escalated to the point of mistreatment, extreme cruelty, abuse, then that could definitely give you or the person who is applying for their papers the ability to apply on their own. And in this case, you could be married for 1 month, you could be married for 2 months, you could be married for 20 years. You could still qualify to apply on your own. So Tanya Cummins, can't stress enough, there is a solution here, and I see you say yes, yes. So I'm thinking I am touching some points that you can definitely relate to. Can't stress enough, call, schedule a consultation, and let's talk about it. Because even though, yes, you can file the papers on your own, if you are being mistreated, I need to confirm that in a consultation, confirm you qualify in every way for this solution, which is called VAWA. If you do, you could apply for your own work permit, your own green card, even if you're in the country without permission, even if you're in the country without status, even if you've crossed the border in some circumstances without permission. So call, schedule a consultation, and let's talk about it. I totally get you, Tanya, that you're tired. Definitely call, schedule a consultation. I work with my clients all the time through this. I have their back through it. So call me and let's talk and get started, should you qualify. All right, so can you look about your green card on your own without status? So Shen, the sexy diva, I just touched on one way, and that's through VAWA. So if you do have a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident spouse, if you're under 25 and you have a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident parent, or you have a U.S. citizen son or daughter who's 21 and up, and they are mistreating you, that's one way that you can. Now, with other ways, it's really going to depend on your circumstances. If you don't have a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident spouse, parent, or U.S. citizen son or daughter who's 21 and up, have you been the victim of a crime in the past? Have you been the victim of trafficking? TNU visas, visa recipients also have the ability to apply for permanent residence eventually after having the T or U visa for 3 years, but that I would have to evaluate to see if you qualify as the victim of certain qualifying crimes or the victim of trafficking. So Shen, the sexy diva, okay, so none of the above. Now keep in mind that I'm touching on very general information. Just one fact may change your situation, may even change the solution. So if you really want to confirm whether you have options, call, schedule a consultation. What should I do for I-130? Still haven't gotten approval, submitted on January 2020. So in your case, Yatin Patel, I'd have to figure out what's going on, what is the average processing times that you should be within, and then suggest a solution in that case if there is. Sometimes it's just a waiting game just because the immigration process is slow, right? That's one thing I have to remind my clients and remind people, that there is unfortunately no magic, no snapping of the fingers to get the process to move faster. I wish that were the case. In some circumstances, you could definitely request an expedite of the process if you're going through an urgent situation, humanitarian crisis. If you are a company, you're going to lose a lot of money because of the delay or because of USCIS error. Those are 3 of the main criteria used to request an expedite. But keep in mind that it's terribly backlogged. And if you submitted it on January 2020, you're not alone. There are other individuals who are still waiting along with you. But whether you have a particular solution is going to depend on your facts. Which service center, what is the range of time that they're taking to process I-130s right now? So I got my EAD card, but not my SSN. Do I need it or should I just wait for it to come? So Kelsmia, sometimes the SSN doesn't come with the EAD. If in the case that it has not come, what you can do is contact the Social Security Administration and see if you can schedule an appointment. Each Social Security office, because you're going to contact the local office, is going to have different requirements on how to apply for the SSN or how to request a status on your pending SSN. So go ahead and call them and get started on that to see. So Google your local Social Security Administration office. Which state do you live in? I'm in Boca Raton, Florida, Sanusi, but keep in mind that I represent clients all over the United States, in all 50 states, and all over the globe, as a matter of fact. And so I'm not limited by, as a U.S. immigration attorney, I'm not limited by state lines or borders. I offer phone and video consultations, and I'm very experienced with working with my clients and USCIS offices, embassies, as well as immigration courts all over the U.S. and the world. So it says 22 months to 29 months. So Yatin Patel, that means that you are still within the processing time. I know that's hard to hear, but right now that means that that service center is taking almost 2 years to over 2 years to process I-130s. And in that case, it's really a waiting game unless you qualify to ask for it to be expedited. So that's where the consultation is going to be required. Can you travel with an approved VAWA? So Sanusi, you'll have to apply for your I-130, the travel document, to be able to travel. If I want to go back to my maiden name, can I just fill in the form in it? I've been divorced years. So with the naturalization, sometimes they do allow for a name change. However, when you are filling out other types of applications, it doesn't necessarily allow for you to just automatically change your name, and you have to show evidence that you have legally changed your name. Now, if you are used to interchanging your maiden name with your married name, then that may be a different story. However, if you formally change your name, usually you should use that formally changed name until you can get it changed otherwise. I am a permanent resident, and I sent in for my renewal, and I did that in May. How long does it usually take? So if you are renewing your 10-year green card, it's taking about a year right now to get those renewals. If you're renewing your 2-year to a 10-year, you could be looking at a 2-year process, and it really depends on your the service center that's processing your case. Hi there, my walk with Christ. It's nice to see you. Thanks for saying hi. Once my spouse, who is a U.S. citizen, files for my green card, can I remain outside the U.S.? So Dangles, it depends. So is the question, should I remain outside of the U.S.? Yes, you can remain outside of the U.S., but I don't know what your circumstances are. Are you in the U.S. without your status? Have you overstayed? Because if you've overstayed in the U.S. over 180 days and you leave the country, you're going to trigger at least a 3-year bar. That means when you go to your green card interview, you're going to get a nasty surprise. The officer will tell you you're inadmissible and you have to apply for a waiver. If you have a U.S. citizen spouse and you came into the country with a visa, then you can possibly apply. You can qualify for adjustment of status. So in this case, Dangles 030. This is not legal advice I'm providing you. Get legal advice before you leave the country, because you don't know if that's going to have more severe consequences. So schedule a consultation. Can't stress that enough to make sure you're on the right path. How much time do I have to wait? So it really depends on the processing time. So Yatin, if you see 22 to 29 months, then it might very well be that your wait has to be that long. If my husband is a citizen and files, how long is the process? So you could be looking at 1.5 to 2-year process. Hi, I have a question. My sister got married 11 months ago. How long ago taking marriage process now? So 18 to 24 months is the average time. And keep in mind, those are estimates. So sometimes it depends on the service center. My experience is I'm seeing 18 to 24 months. However, the service center could have a longer wait time. And keep in mind that when you file these applications, if you don't file it properly, this could also lead to the delay. For example, if you file your application, you don't file a strong application from the beginning, it's already a red flag for them, and they're gonna review it with more detail. When they schedule the appointment, they're gonna have to ask you for more evidence. They're gonna approach your application with more skepticism. So it's very important that you create a strong application from the get-go to try to avoid unnecessarily delays as well as denials. Hi, I have a question. So I answered that. Okay, so Dangles 030, you're outside of the US. All right, so you can definitely wait outside of the US. Hi there, Queen just said, I have a valid B1, B2. So now if you have to travel back and forth, it could be a risk, because when you're trying to come in and you have a pending I-130, based on your marriage to a US citizen, they could very well interpret that you have immigrant intent and turn you back around. So traveling while your application is pending may be a risky move. Always nice to see you too. Just said, if you overstay and later on married, will you be penalized in the future? So not necessarily. The immigration consequences would follow on the particular circumstances. Did you enter the country without permission? In that case, you may not qualify for adjustment of status. If you overstayed, and then you got married right after, so you traveled on Saturday, you filed your papers on Monday, that may be interpreted by the officer as misrepresentation, because if you came in with your visa, got married the Saturday, so you came in the Saturday, got married the Sunday, filed your papers on the Monday, the officer could interpret that you didn't have intention to come and stay permanently, and that could be read as misrepresentation. However, my clients have successfully adjusted status after overstaying and then getting married. So usually what happens in these scenarios is that the spouse comes and they overstay, and because of changed circumstances, they end up getting married, and then they apply later on. And so in a case like that, the officer understands that there was a change of circumstances. So Glory Dania, if you're concerned about something, get legal advice, because the information I'm giving you here is not legal advice, it's general information. And so to give you personalized, more accurate information and legal advice, it's important to schedule a consultation. Hi, Jhine274, nice to see you. Can you tell me what is the timeline in Atlanta, Georgia for the I-485 marriage-based green card interview? You'll have to check the USCIS website for that. So I can tell you, because there are so many USCIS offices, that I couldn't possibly commit that to memory. However, there is a nifty tool on the USCIS.gov's website where you can check timelines for service centers. And you can do that by going to USCIS.gov, scroll down to case processing times, and you can choose the applicable service center. What is the waiting time for Nebraska Center? So Queen just said, you can do the same thing that I told Jay Hines. Go to USCIS.gov and you can look at the Nebraska Service Center, look at the forms that you submitted to them, and you can see the range of time that they're taking to process those types of applications. So now back to, if you are in the US without your papers, how can you fix your status? Now, if you have to qualify in some way. You can't just be here and then so there's nothing that says you can be here for 5 years straight. If you make it to 5 years straight living in the US, you can apply for permanent residence or to fix your status. You must qualify in some way through an employer, through a relative, a qualifying relative. or through humanitarian means. So if you've been the victim of a crime, if you've been the victim of trafficking means you were lured here in some way, convinced to come here, and then you were forced to do things in regards to labor or sex trafficking against your will, then in that case, you could possibly qualify for the trafficking, so the T visa as a victim of trafficking. Also, asylum, if you have a fear of returning to your home country because you're a part of a group that's being harmed, persecuted, threatened in your country, that could also be a basis to fix your status in the U.S. Now, if you are here, you're the immediate relative of a U.S. citizen. That means that you are the spouse of a U.S. citizen, you're the parent of a U.S. citizen who's 21 and up, or you're the son or daughter of a U.S. citizen who is under 21 and unmarried. You could possibly qualify to adjust status in the U.S. That means to apply for your permanent residence and work permit while you stay in the U.S. As long as you enter the country with some sort of permission. Were you paroled? Did you come through the border and were you waived to come into the country? Did you come in with your visa? Even in these cases where you overstayed, you can still submit the adjustment of status, but and that is, of course, that you qualify in every other way, that you're not inadmissible because of other immigration violations. So correspond is received USCIS status online update after biometrics done. What that means. Jay Hind, I'm not the attorney on your case, and so I can't necessarily explain to you, what that means. If you did biometrics, it probably means that they've updated your status to show that you've done the biometrics. However, it's hard for me to advise you if I'm not the attorney on your case. Hello, do you know the estimate time of receiving the copy of the I-130 when filling out the G639? No, unfortunately, these things can take a couple of weeks. When you are requesting a copy of anything from the USCIS, it's going to take a few weeks, so at least 3 weeks. Now, keep in mind that if you are, and this is called the FOIA request, so this is the Freedom of Information Act, and so it allows you, so if you've been through a process in the past or you want to see what kinds of records you have, or what is the USCIS or ICE or the border protection, what they have, what information they have on you, you can submit this request. It definitely makes it easier if you're just asking for the copy of the I-130. If you're just asking for that, then it could be a simple request that they could get to you in a few weeks. So you could be looking at 3 weeks. However, I would not be able to give you a timeline. We never received our I-130, but we only have 30 days to appeal our I-485 due to denial. So TCW 1987, in this case, you should schedule a consultation, because even though you have 30 days, you may be able to still file your documentation as showing that you intend to appeal since you have 30 days. However, I don't know your situation. I'm not the attorney on your file, and you should not act on any information I'm providing you until you get personal legal advice, because this is just general information. However, and I don't know, I really don't know what your situation is. It's very important in this case to figure out the basis of the denial in order to successfully appeal it. So keep your questions coming. I am talking about ways to fix your status if you're here without your papers. Now, one question I get often is, I don't have any relatives. I don't have an employer. I don't have any ties to the U.S. How can I fix my status? Or sometimes I have aunts, I have uncles, I have friends who are U.S. citizens. Unfortunately, in cases where you don't have any ties at all, no employer, no U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident spouse or parent or citizen son or daughter who's 21 and up, or even a U.S. Citizen sibling, but the sibling, usually a U.S. citizen sibling, is very unhelpful to help you to fix your status if you're already here without status. So to me, right now, that's a non-factor. Even though if you're outside of the U.S., it could definitely be a good path for you to obtain permanent residence through your U.S. citizen sibling who's 21 and up. If you're already here, and you have a U.S. citizen sibling, it will not be a quick and easy path for you to fix your status in the U.S. And in addition, aunts, uncles, grandparents, friends, cousins, none of those individuals outside of a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident spouse or parent or citizen son or daughter who's 21 and up can help you to qualify for permanent residence. So what is your fee for reviewing the I-130 paperwork? So Nikki Williams, I don't review any forms that have been completed by another individual in the consultation. So what I advise on, I can give advice on your circumstances, how to move forward, how I can help you with your process. But when I'm reviewing paperwork, I have to do it over hours, because it would not be fair to you to review your paperwork in 1 hour. That is the length of time of my consultations, but that is purely to provide you legal advice and provide you the information for you to determine whether you want to hire me. And it's also your opportunity to get the information you need to empower yourself. But I don't review paperwork while I'm in there, because reviewing paperwork definitely takes more than 1 hour to do. Is it possible to sponsor a sibling? I'm a citizen because I only know it's just the parents. So yes, you can sponsor your siblings as a U.S. citizen who's 21 and up. But keep in mind that if you sponsor your sibling and your sibling is here in the U.S. Without status, they would not be able to adjust status in the United States. That means stay in the U.S. and apply for the permanent residence. They usually would have to leave the country at that point, and the immigration consequences that follows really depends on, did they overstay in the U.S. or did they remain outside of the U.S. So it's really, in that case, whether or not you can move forward and what process you're going to follow is going to be dependent on the situation. What is the consultation fee? So it's $150 for up to 1 hour. So in that consultation, you get legal advice, detailed legal advice. So I go through your situation in detail, make sure that the options that you are pursuing are the right way, that you're not making any mistakes. And you can also walk out with me as your attorney should you need that assistance. I want to hire you, but I don't want to pay for consultations because I know what I want. So even though you know what you want, I, as the attorney, still, I have to evaluate your situation, make sure you qualify. And so it is non-negotiable. I require all clients to do a consultation because it is my chance to evaluate whether you qualify, that everything all your facts line up with what you want, and then determine whether I can help you through your process. So you definitely get value, you get the legal advice, and so it's important to call over to schedule a consultation, because an attorney can know something that you don't necessarily know. So that's where you can get that information. Riz, you are welcome. Can my husband come to visit me while I'm in the process of filing for him to come to the US? So Nikki Williams, 33, that could be risky for your husband, because the I-130 process means that he has immigrant intent. And so when he's coming to the United States, an officer may definitely turn him back, and because they have interpreted the pending I-130 as immigrant intent. So if your spouse is going to visit, they are going to have to bear the risk of being turned back at the border. In addition to that, if they are turned back at the border, that could complicate their situation. So keep your questions coming. I am here to answer your questions. So I'm talking about how to fix your status when you're in the United States. And I just specified some of those ways. And it's very important to understand that you can't just be here without any ties and have a direct path to fixing your status. There has to be some circumstance or some connection, some tie, such as a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident, spouse or parent or citizen, son or daughter who's 21 and up, who can help you to fix your status. Now, as the immediate relative of a U.S. citizen, you could possibly qualify if you came into the country with a visa to adjust status and get a work permit while you wait. You don't have to leave the U.S. However, if you don't qualify for that, but you do have a U.S. citizen or legal permanent resident, spouse or parent, you could possibly still leave the you could still apply for permanent residence, but what you'd have to do is apply for the waiver. Would he need to file with the U.S. Embassy in his country for a change of status? So usually when you're filing for the I-130, the I-130 petition, once it's approved in the U.S., it's sent to the National Visa Center. The National Visa Center will coordinate with you, your spouse, or your attorney, if you have an attorney. And the attorney will usually do this where you don't have to do much. The attorney, such as I usually work with the National Visa Center directly on behalf of my clients. And once they get we get the paperwork together, send it into the National Visa Center to their satisfaction, they will schedule the interview at the embassy. He'll get an immigrant visa to come to the U.S. if approved, and once he gets to the airport and it's processed, he becomes a permanent resident. So I am going to head over to Instagram. I have a live that's scheduled on Instagram. So if you want to continue your questions, want to continue this conversation, join me on Instagram right now. I'm the Immigration Attorney on Instagram. You can also go to the link in my bio and it will take you directly to the Instagram page where you can go ahead and continue asking your questions. So I am going to just try to touch on these last few. My friend was J1 here and she overstayed here for over 2 years, but she's getting married soon. So Riz, that's where your friend needs to get consultation. Sometimes the J1 does have 2-year foreign residency requirements, and that can complicate her situation. Is it better to apply after 2 years of marriage or right away, since overstayed for 2 years? So not necessarily, but get legal advice because the answer to that question is really going to depend on the circumstances involved. Who do you recommend me getting an attorney rather than filing on my own? So you're always going to hear me recommend you get an attorney because so many times individuals do it themselves. They think it's just, hi there, Dark Horse 45, always nice to see you. They always think that it's going to be an easy process. Immigration law is complex, and one little fact can really throw off the entire process. So I always recommend get an attorney, even though it's not required. It's risky if you don't, just because I've seen it happen time and time again where the case gets delayed, gets denied just because they jumped into a process that they underestimated. So thanks everyone for your questions. Join me on live on Instagram where we can continue this conversation. For those of you who know you're going to need that consultation, I highly recommend it. Call 561-405-4889, or you'll see the number all over my videos. Call. There is a scheduling coordinator who's available up until 11 p.m. tonight. So call, schedule that consultation, and we can talk more about your particular circumstances, because the information that I provided you tonight is general information. It's not personal legal advice. You're welcome, Riz. Dark Horse 45. Thanks again for stopping in and saying hello. I'll see you soon on Instagram, or I'll see you tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Have a good weekend if I don't see you through the weekend. Bye.